let's move on to again something in the life of the disciples. We now have the founding of the Sangha. Now what is a Sangha? The Sangha is a monastic community. Now let's go back to the sermon, right? So we have the 5 ascetics who had left the Buddha because they felt that he was not too serious about his practices. They were disappointed. They left him in disgust. Then we see that they are inspired by what he asked them. Okay, he says, have I any time spoken to you like this? They are touched by his straightforwardness. Okay, they are inspired and they accept his insights and his teachings. So after being inspired, we see that they are admitted as the first bhikkhus or the monks, and therefore they become the first members of this monastic community. And therefore they dedicate their whole life towards following, practicing and teaching the teachings of the Buddha. So now we have a follow-up sermon. We had the first sermon of the Buddha, which had a lot of content in it. Now we have the second or the follow-up sermon, which is the Anatta Kala Khana Sutta. So this basically differs in the sense that the key focus here is this concept of the Anatta, which is the no self. And we see that this was delivered just a few days after the first sermon. Now, what is this doctrine of no self all about? So here he explained that neither the body nor the self can be considered permanent. Why? Because as we have already seen, they are subject to change. And as a consequence of this Anatta Lakhana Sutta, once again we see that all the 5 bhikkhus or the monks, they gained deep insight into the nature of existence. So here we see that they were able to gain more knowledge, more insight about themselves, and this led them to become the perfected ones or the Arhat. In this way we see that they had reached enlightenment and thus were now free from all defilement, and suffering. The perfected one. Arhat means the perfected one. So it is said that after this happened, after you had the founding of the first monastic community, now the Buddha spent a few more months, okay, around 3 months roughly, they say, in the Banaras region. Okay, and here we see that he comes across a important person by the name of Yasa. Now who was this Yasa? So he was a very important plus wealthy person, and he and his whole, first and foremost, he gets inspired and becomes a disciple. And therefore he joins a Sangha, and later we see that his whole family also gets converted. Now who are they? His father, mother, and former wife, they also become the first lay disciples. And therefore it is said that Yasa and his family in a way took refuge in the Triple Jewel. Now what is this Triple Jewel? It is the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So what is the Dhamma? Teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha, as we know, is the domestic community. So this is how we have the founding of the first lay disciples also. Okay, and all of these took refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. In this way we see that slowly the expansion begins to take place. You have more and more people coming to know about it, okay, because these early disciples also go out teaching others, influencing others, and then you also have the friends of Yasa. So you have 4 of his close friends who also follow his example, and they enter the monastic order. And as this happens, we see that gradually, as it is quite common with some new movement, okay, it begins to spread quickly. And there's a lot of enthusiasm with the people now because it is something new. People found this to be so impelling, to be so convincing, that we see that slowly around 50 more of their friends, Okay, so you see first Yasa joins, then you have 4 of his friends also embracing the monastic order, and now 50 of their friends also join the Sangha. And in due course of time we see that all of them also become perfected ones, or the Arhat. So as a result of it now, we see that the number reached to 60. These were 60 perfected disciples. So once we see that after addressing them, these disciples of the Buddha are in a way sent out to proclaim his mercy, compassion, and wisdom to the world. So just as he realizes his vocation as a teacher, similarly these also are sent out and they are given instructions by the Buddha on how they are supposed to go out. And then we also see that Ananda is the Buddha's cousin, so he in a way later becomes the chief attendant. So he pleaded on behalf of the women. Okay, so that the women also be included into the Sangha. And here we see that gradually the Buddha accepted the plea of Ananda, and you had his own aunt. Anybody remembers the name? So you have Mahapajapati Gautami, who along with her friends became the first woman to enter into the order of nuns, or what we would call as the Bhikkhuni Sangha. Now as we see, in any organization there's always this kind of, there'll be some individuals who are always power hungry, always want to seek status, seek power. And the same thing also happened in the Sangha. Now we see that some of the members became hostile, some were jealous of the Buddha's success, and also some of them attempted to defame him. Now among all these, this Devdatta is a very important person. Why? Because he was another cousin of the Buddha and he was very ambitious. So although he had joined the Sangha, in a way he was not completely devoted towards the teachings of the Buddha. In a way, he had his own agenda, his own ambition in order to succeed the Buddha. Now, about 8 years, it is said, before the death of the Buddha, this very same Devdatta had suggested that the leadership of the Sangha be handed over to him. Okay, so he said, I want to become the next one who will succeed you. Now, this was because the Buddha his health was not good, he was nearing his old age. But we see that the Buddha rejected his plea. And he basically stated that he would not pass on the leadership to anyone, but the Sangha would be governed in a democratic way, which would be by following the principles of guided by the Vinaya. Now what is this Vinaya? This Vinaya would be the code of discipline. Now obviously, when Devadatta got this kind of response from the Buddha, he would have been furious, right? And here we see that he now decides to take revenge. Takes revenge on Buddha's life, and he tries to kill the Buddha. Now it is said that he made 3 attempts in order to kill the Buddha. But we see that all these attempts failed. Now what were these 3 attempts? So firstly we see that he sent assassins. Okay, he hired certain assassins, people to go out and kill the Buddha. Any idea what happens? Okay, but why do they become disciples? They just go and become disciples, or is there something that happens? So when they go to kill him, they are in a way touched by the calmness of the Buddha. Okay, and when they look at his life, they themselves get inspired and they become his followers. Okay. Next, we see that he decided to throw a boulder. Okay, as the Buddha was going along that path, he decided to throw a big boulder. But what we see that so suppose this is the path where the Buddha is coming, he decided to throw a big boulder. As it was nearing the Buddha, we see that this boulder splits into 2. And it is said that only a small part, kind of hit the Buddha and he got a slight wound of it. Okay, but major disaster was averted. And finally we see he set an intoxicated animal, right? Which animal was it? Elephant. Okay, so intoxicated elephant in the path of the Buddha. But we see that once again, as the elephant approached the Buddha, in a way, looking at the calmness, the elephant also became calm and went on its way. So in this way we see that the 3 attempts on the life of the Buddha failed. Now once this is failed, Devadatta doesn't give up, right? Still he is very ambitious about becoming the next successor, and he tries to divide the community. Okay, so therefore he tries to form a new community where the rules are stricter. So how are these rules strict? First and foremost, they say that they will live only in the forest. He says the members will have their clothes only of discarded materials. They will not live under any roof, but only in the shade of trees, etc. Okay, so there are many such rules that he makes, and he tries to get the newly ordained members or the newly ordained monks to form a separate community. Okay, but we see that, however, these monks were then persuaded to come back by Sariputta and Moggallana, again the Buddha's disciples. Finally, we are told that after these failed attempts, he suffers because of his own deeds. He becomes ill and he died about 9 months later. Okay, so in a way, he faces the effects of his deeds and he dies. Now, what happens to the Sangha after this? How does the Buddha prepare them for his death? We'll take a look tomorrow.